trying to get back to business as usual today, but the Prime Minister was instead dealt another blow. The third resignation or sacking in as many weeks, piling further pressure on his leadership. This time is Paul Ovenden, not a household name, but inside Downing Street, one of the most influential figures around the Prime Minister. On a six-figure salary as Director of Strategy, he shapes speeches, media messaging and even policy, a key voice in Keir Starmer's inner circle. Tonight, ITV News can reveal messages in which Mr Ovenden made explicit and highly offensive remarks about veteran MP Diane Abbott, revelations that ultimately forced him to quit. Sent on Labour's internal instant messaging system in 2017, Mr Ovenden, then a press officer for the party, tells a colleague about playing a more explicit version of the game Snog, Marry, Kill with female Labour colleagues the night before. He says, "I have got something that will make you laugh out loud," and adds, "Honestly, I nearly wet myself from laughing." What? I love that game, is the reply. We're not showing the messages here due to their explicit nature, but Mr Ovenden then details conversation involving Diane Abbott and a sex toy. "That's amazing. Some awful mental pictures are assembling in my head," is the response from his colleague. Mr Ovenden then goes on to describe a discussion about a sex act directed at Diane Abbott and says, "Honestly, it was outrageous." The colleague replies, "Oh my God." Mr Ovenden stopped working for the party a few months later, but continued to comment on Labour.
Also, the existing members, how have their views changed on Labour last week?
He later returned to the party, eventually rising to become one of Keir Starmer's most senior advisers. Referring to the messages, Mr Ovenden said it was a silly conversation with female colleagues and that he regrets the messages and is embarrassed by them. In a statement, he told us, "As an advisor, my duty is to protect the reputation of the Prime Minister and his government. Most people could find a private conversation they've had in the last decade, whether in the pub or on WhatsApp, that would be distasteful or embarrassing if it were published. While it is chilling that a private conversation from nearly a decade ago can do this sort of damage, I am also truly, deeply sorry for it and the hurt it will cause." Diane Abbott declined to comment, but those close to her say this sort of language is something she's had to deal with for years.
It is shocking. What a way to treat the mother of the house, the longest serving female MP. She is so used to getting this sort of hate. Number 10 themselves have a lot to answer for in terms of Diane's treatment.
The latest revelations are another chapter in Ms Abbott's fraught relationship with the Labour Party under Keir Starmer. The former Shadow Home Secretary was suspended in 2023 over comments on racism, reinstated in time for the 2024 election, then suspended again earlier this year. She now sits as an independent. For some, the messages we've seen have not come as a surprise.
It doesn't shock me, but it's disappointing that, when I worked for the Labour Party, it was quite wild, really, as an employer. Certain behaviours obviously were just looked aside from certain people if you were in the correct faction.
This lands at a precarious moment for the Prime Minister. He has already lost two key figures to scandal recently after he sacked Lord Mandelson, his US ambassador, last week due to his ties to convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. That followed the dramatic resignation of his Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, over unpaid stamp duty, prompting sweeping changes to his cabinet. Those issues came after the summer break, which was supposed to signal the start of phase 2 of Keir Starmer's government. Now, the Prime Minister is dealing with fresh controversy, this time inside his own inner circle. It is another blow and adds to what has already been one of the most difficult periods Keir Starmer has faced since entering office.
OK, so Shihab, break it down for us. Just how bad is this for the Prime Minister?
Yeah, as I sort of mentioned in that report there, it's not exactly been a smooth couple of weeks already, and this is not a positive news story. Something that I should add is we understand that Paul Ovenden had intended to resign anyway away from this, and then when we approached him with the messages that we'd seen, he tendered that resignation almost immediately, much quicker than planned. Those who are close to Diane Abbott, her allies, are absolutely furious about this. They say, look, this is the way Number 10 has treated her her for quite some time. The chief whip has reached out to offer support. Her allies want much, much more than that. They want Number 10 to be much more proactive. For their part, they've described it as appalling and unacceptable. That's Downing Street. They've described Diane Abbott as a trailblazer. They've accepted the fact that she's faced horrendous abuse throughout her time in politics, and they say that this sort of language has no place in our politics. But what this means for the Prime Minister, who's already going through a very turbulent time, is that now he has to deal with that without one of his closest advisors, simply because he had no choice but to resign.
All right, Shihab, thanks very much. Well, you can read the full transcript of those messages on our website. Just go to itv.com/news. Well, that fresh scandal came as the Prime Minister was forced to address awkward questions over his handling of the appointment and sacking of Lord Mandelson, as she had mentioned earlier. Well, today, Sir Keir Starmer said he would never have made Mandelson US ambassador had he known the full extent of his relationship with paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. But a source close to Mandelson has told ITV News that officials did know about the emails. Here's our political correspondent, Carl Dinnan.
They've been rehearsing for President Trump's arrival. But even the Grenadier Guards can't keep the ghost of Jeffrey Epstein from hovering over this week's state visit. Today, the Prime Minister tried to banish that spectre with his account of the Peter Mandelson affair, saying he hadn't known the full picture when he appointed Mandelson to Washington.
Had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him. Because what emerged last week were emails, Bloomberg emails, which showed that the nature and extent of the relationship that Peter Mandelson had with Epstein was far different to what I had understood to be the position when I appointed him.
It was a week ago when Bloomberg News first wrote to Mandelson about his emails supporting Jeffrey Epstein, urging him to fight his conviction, saying, "I think the world of you, and I feel hopeless and furious about what has happened." Mandelson forwarded their letter to the Foreign Office. Then on Wednesday morning, Mandelson publicly warned that more information was coming and apologised for his relationship with Epstein. Yet hours later, the Prime Minister was still backing Mandelson in the House of Commons.
I have confidence in the ambassador in the role that he is doing.
It was only the next day, Thursday, that Mandelson was sacked. So why had it taken so long?
It was only on Wednesday early evening that I knew the contents of the Bloomberg emails. It was only very late on Wednesday when Peter Mandelson replied to the questions that had been put to him by government officials. And it was on that basis that I took my decision that he should be removed.
But the Conservatives have sensed an opportunity to, well, make hay. They've secured a debate in the House of Commons tomorrow, meaning by the time the President touches down, MPs will have spent the afternoon debating Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein.
The Prime Minister and his government told us that they didn't know anything about those emails when I asked him questions at PM Keys on Wednesday. We now find out that he actually did have a lot of that information. So he needs to come clean and clear up this mess. He's the one who said that he believed in transparency. We're not seeing any transparency at all.
A source close to Peter Mandelson told ITV News that the government did know about the extent of his relationship with Epstein because he told them about it when he was appointed. None of this quite the ideal setting for a state visit from a president who has had to answer his own questions about Jeffrey Epstein. Carl Dinnan, ITV News, Westminster.
Well, our political editor, Robert Peston, joins us from his studios in West London, as you can see. So, Robert, where does all of this leave the Prime Minister tonight?
Still in a very difficult place. It's the first time that we've heard from the Prime Minister since he sacked Peter Mandelson. And he said two substantive things. First, he acknowledged that when the vetting process took place, yes, the government was aware that Peter Mandelson had continued his friendship with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein after that initial conviction for soliciting a child. And in fact, had continued that relationship for many years. But his defence of why he thought it was appropriate to appoint him as the ambassador to Washington was that he didn't have the detail of the depth of the friendship, nor, you know, as we've just heard in Carl's film, the detail of the email saying things like, you know, your friends love you and you've got to press for early release and you've got to fight the charges against you. Now, you know, Prime Minister says it was only when he read those emails late on Wednesday that he realised that he'd made a terrible mistake in appointing Peter Mandelson. And then there is a second area where, frankly, there are still questions to be answered. The Prime Minister again acknowledges that the Bloomberg letter that was sent on the Monday and that was dealt with by the Foreign Office on the Tuesday contained details of these emails. But he, the Prime Minister, was never shown that letter before Prime Minister's question. And therefore, the question, and, you know, I have to say, if I'd been shown that letter, I don't think I would have stood up at Prime Minister's questions and said what the Prime Minister said, which is that he had confidence in his US ambassador. So something went very, very badly wrong in Downing Street. Was the fault that officials didn't volunteer this letter to him, or was the fault that he didn't ask to see it? Either way, I don't think the Prime Minister is out of the woods on this issue, not by a long chalk.
OK, thanks very much, Robert. Well, there's trouble for Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch as well. One of her shadow Tory ministers has quit to join Reform UK. Danny Kruger is the first sitting Conservative MP to defect to Reform. And as he did so, he delivered a stinging attack on his former party, saying they are over. And our political correspondent, Harry Horton, is at Westminster. So, Harry, how big a blow is this for Kemi Badenoch?
Well, at a time when things are going pretty badly for the government, here comes a big blow for the Conservative opposition. Now, Danny Kruger, not exactly a household name. He is the son of Prue Leith, the Bake Off star, but he's also very influential within the Conservative Party. He sits on the right of the party. He's an evangelical Christian. He was involved in Robert Jenrick's leadership campaign, and he worked for both Boris Johnson and David Cameron. He was a lifelong Conservative, but today he delivered this devastating analysis about his former party.
The Conservative Party is over. Over as a national party. Over as the principal opposition to the left. But I am not despondent, because conservatism is not over. It's never been needed more, and actually it's never been more vibrant.
Now, these defections aren't without risk for Nigel Farage. He won't want his party to become seen as a home for disgruntled Conservatives. It does mean Reform are back up to 5 MPs, although they've never been able to keep that many for too long. For Kemi Badenoch, well, here's how she reacted to the defection today.
Danny has made his case very clear that this is not about me. I can't be distracted by that, and I'm not going to get blown off course by these sorts of incidents. I know that this is the sort of thing that is going to happen while a party is changing.
Well, we are just weeks now from the Conservative Party conference, and as we get closer to that, many Conservative MPs, many Conservative members might be wondering whether their party is heading in the right direction.